Yeah, I don't know if that went through or not. I always get the error message. Um,
Yeah, it's there. We're on.
we are okay. Well, welcome to Quantum Leap with David and Corey, and um, we're excited to bring you a segment on referral marketing, and I'm still not completely happy with that term because I feel like it's more than that. And the kind of short version, I call it $1 million network, and it's even probably more than that because it's almost your whole life in some respect. But first, I wanted to introduce my co-host Corey, and if you don't mind just telling us kind of what a business network kind of means to you too.
Sure. So I'm Cory Knott, co-owner of Takeaway Coaching, and I do business partnership coaching, helping people who have relationships maintain that relationship while they're in business together. And the having the network really means having people that you can draw upon as resources for your clients, as resources for yourself, as resources in building relationships, so that when things are slow, you have a way to build up your business, and when things are going well, you have other people to support and help and be a part of a greater community. And I think what I really have always really loved about networking is being around other business owners and entrepreneurs, and who are thinking or are forward thinking or want to be forward thinking. Right? It's about the about overcoming the obstacles rather than getting stuck and complaining about them. No, we do that.
Yeah. Yeah, and it really is kind of a well that you draw on for inspiration and motivation. And that's why kind of your values, shared values, and the culture is so important. And that's why I feel like we're so lucky in the East Bay because so much of it's kind of cultural, but it's also business too. So, um, I just think in looking at this network, but then it's also greater than the geography. Now, this really depends on the business because some businesses, if you're just geographically based, say you're a carpentry shop or maybe you're a contractor, we have a lot of those trades industries here in the East Bay area. You're probably mostly focused in the East Bay. But somebody like you, a business coach, you talk to a lot of people even down in LA or even out of state with Incentive is almost like a global reach in a lot of ways to have people in your network, even from England, who teach you about things. So what Corey and I wanted to just go over today is just a little bit about what this network might look like, how to build one, but also how to use this network to close business. And this is a critical thing, and this is something Corey and I have focused on and looked at. And I think when you get a lot of these pieces into place, that closed business just kind of comes to you as part of a system, and it closes almost naturally once you get to that point. But that can be, the challenge is how do you get to that point? But we'll just back up here first, and I'm going to ask Corey a series of questions. I might share a couple of my thoughts first, and
Sure.
I'll follow up. And we'll just have a discussion because he really is a master at some of this, and he taught me a lot of this stuff. And we have a lot of people in our networks. We call them. I have this book called Masters of Networking. So there's some really good networkers in our area, and it makes everybody better. But just to lead off, Corey, how can one learn to network? I have a couple books here that I shared from Ivan Meisner, but I almost think you don't even need to read a book. But what are your thoughts? I think it can help, once you get going. But
What is that? There's a Sandler book called "You Can't Teach a Kid to Ride a Bike at a Seminar," right? It's just books and seminars are great places to get information, but they aren't the practice of those things. And so networking is a skill, and most people do not start out with that skill. Some people obtain it early on and seem to do pretty well with it, and others do not. And so and still everybody can build upon the skill, because even if you have those early skills that some people just seem to naturally have, but usually just comes from being better with their peers, there's still a lot that can be learned. But just getting started is a matter, and I'm just looking back on how I got started, which wasn't very well. um, is find, an open and friendly group. I, sometimes chambers can be good, but I would avoid the mixers at first. I would look for where there's, orientations and classes and things like that, and where you get an opportunity to introduce yourself. So a lot of business classes can be good. There's, various small organizations that do that. You can do some networking online and then find some of those groups. But again, it can be depending on your style. Some people really like to get out and meet people, and if you're not one of those kinds, then it's really a matter of looking for somewhere where you are given some time to introduce yourself, and it's a warm and open group. And that may mean asking around from your peers or looking, at reviews for groups along the way. I mean, we're part of BNI, and BNI is an excellent way to do that, but it can be also, it may not be for everyone immediately. So, um, and unfortunately, there's not as many networking groups as there used to be working live right now.
Yeah, I hear you. And I'm going to jump ahead a little bit here because I think this is such an important thing about the internal work. I think the internal work can help build our network naturally. And what I mean by that is some of the things that you teach and you do on Lyft and that I put in that book about understanding your why and core values. So why would you say that is important to building a network and kind of talking about your business?
Yeah, I think that's jumping a little too far ahead. I would say,
Okay.
I mean, one of the first things just to do, and I wish I had done this. I mean, I did this in 2007 or eight. I think I took the Room Full of Referrals class, which can be a little bit of a challenge to find one of those, but ultimately is based on DISC, DISC, which gives you if you take a DISC test, and you can take them free online, will give you kind of an overview of how you work in an environment and also kind of communicate and express your emotions. It's not a personality test; it's a behavioral test. So your personality is how you see things and your perspectives and what you enjoy, and behavioral is how you express it. And sometimes people, we look at how other people's express and say, why am I not like that? They must be natural at it. And really, it's just because they're a different style. So if you kind of have that awareness of your your style, it becomes easier to go into a networking group and feel comfortable being who you are and recognizing that other people are going to be different. And you can look up Roomful of Referrals online. There's plenty of good videos and so on that have been done over the years. It's not going to match what you can get from a seminar, but I actually would say anybody who wants to learn networking would really benefit from starting from that, because it just creates a sense of like, okay, yeah, everybody is a little bit different. This is why I can be the way I am, stand for who I am. Which then, once you start getting into your why and your core values and understanding those things, just becomes you're able to stand even more for who you are and what you're doing in your business, and why you're the one people would come to, to send their clients and to refer their, friends, family, and their most trusted relationships.
Yeah, yeah, well put. And um, I'll just say networking, I think also what it actually is can be a lot of different things that are maybe hidden that unless you see people who are good at it do those things, you might miss out on key pieces. Like a lot of it isn't just showing up to events and putting back a few, Budweisers or something. It's kind of a lot of kind of one-on-one meetings and other things kind of behind the scenes, trying to researching people, key contacts and things. But um, what would you say some tips are for networking and just what your network might just look like?
Yeah, I mean, we used to teach a lot of this stuff and condense many, many hours. But some really basic tips, especially for, I think, the more actually for anyone, because it is a time thing, right? And we have time crunches, and if you have those constraints, and it's really good to have a plan for meeting people. So one of the things I often did is like, if I'm going to this mixer, I'm going to meet two people. And when I've completed meeting two people, if I want to stay, I stay. But if I'm feeling constrained for time, then that's when I can allow myself to leave. So there's a goal in my networking when I go out to do those things. Work on an introduction. because it's so easy to fumble over ourselves, especially if you have something that maybe people don't immediately understand, and it can get frustrating. Like, why don't they understand it? I was in software development; nobody understood that, and as much as I was trying to tell people, most people just don't get it. And so I worked for a long time trying to figure that one out. And even as a business coach, it can be a challenge. And somebody yesterday was just like, I don't even understand what it is you're helping with. So I'm working on that value proposition because I understand it, but maybe others don't. Another one, avoid selling to others. We don't like to be sold to. So selling to others just creates that sort of feeling like it's icky. It happens. It's one of the biggest complaints in networking is I go to a networking thing and all these people are trying to sell me on insurance and why I should join their multi-level marketing and all these other things. And um, that just chases people away. So we look at the language, like what are you looking for in your business, not whether that person would be a good client for you. Because we want to help each other. We just don't necessarily want to be sold to. And if people want to buy, they will step up and say, I'm interested. But that usually takes also having a relationship, which you don't have when you first meet people. And so I start with what we do in BNI, which is the giver's gain. How can I help others? Always be evaluating your activities, right? If going to, the change, some people just kind of make a routine in their system. I'm going to do this and do this over and over again. But if it's not working, it becomes a waste of time. And so it's good to evaluate whether that's actually helping you in your business or maybe just helping you socially. And then if it's just helping you socially, put it in your social bucket and then evaluate whether you should be looking at some other opportunities for networking. And then when you pick your networks, I always suggest step up immediately into leadership of some kind. Be a host, help set up and tear down. It encourages you to be more interactive with others. You'll meet the people who are really the movers and shakers in that organization, who may have other connections and ways to do that. So it's sort of practicing that giver's gain, but in a way that also puts you in front of people, helping them who are already serving others and probably have pretty deep networks. And that probably is the number one most valuable thing you can do if you have the other things in place is helping the organizations that you're visiting on a regular basis. Be a leader.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, listening to Ivan Meisner's podcast is a good thing too. He talks about a lot of these about conversations, about him showing up at events, and we all get those people who they before it's even like, "What's your name?" It's almost like their cards out and trying to close a deal, and that's kind of like what falls into the category I'd say like bad manners and in business, especially now we're hit up from all angles with deluge on email and internet stuff. But um what you mentioned, kind of elevator pitch, that first impression is so important. That's why I love that concept of room full of referrals, because each person in that room is different and they fall into those different categories, like what you call somebody who's a go-getter. I sell video stuff. If you run into a go-getter, that conversation could be, as easy as, I'm in the abundant referral circle in North Oakland, Cory and I have a podcast, and like, oh great, I want to hear more. Like, here's my card, like get in touch with me. Boom. So, I think even talking or overworking, can be a bad thing, whereas somebody who needs to know more information. So I don't know if you have any, if you could just tell us a little bit about that room for full of referrals and why it's so important to kind of, construct our pitch based on who we're talking to.
Yeah, I think that gets into the deeper networking, but just some basic tools. That's the benefit is just understanding that each person kind of responds differently. They may have a different way of speaking and using language, and their motivations are different. So for instance, am typically more of a relationship builder. I look for um, trust. I look for how I can help others. So it's easy for me to talk about those things. It may not be as easy for some people to ingest that. Um, Though I think ultimately everybody, I talk to wants to, and but in their way. Um, but the reason it's important is understanding, if you understand what motivates people, you'll talk to them more in a way that motivates them. So if you're talking like the go-getter, for instance, the person who is fast, firm, direct, looks you in the eyes, has a strong handshake and all that, they don't really want to spend a lot of time on topics. Whereas somebody like me, I like to talk for quite a while and tell stories and so on. So it can be where I just have to, let them guide how long they're willing to invest in that time and not be um what's the proper word? Not let it get to my emotions that, they want to hear a few things, answer some very direct questions, and then they'll move on. And the best thing to do with them is to give them that, because the more you give them that, then the more willing they are to open up and help, because they trust you to treat them the way they want to be treated. And that's really what the whole thing is about, is the platinum rule, which is treat others the way they want to be treated. And when you do that in networking, it comes back in spades.
Yeah, and also there's that adage that it'll often take 7 touches to close business, and
Yeah.
that might be for like a lower value or mid-value product. So, trying to close right away is really not even feasible anyway. It's more about how to develop that person as a long-term contact to show them why they should be part of your network, what you can do for them, how they might open up a possibility, how they might be able to help you, and show that there is that reciprocity there that, hey, I'm here to serve you. There's those anecdotes when we had Ivan Miser on the podcast where he'll just go out and do these things for people that, you almost doesn't even expect anything in return, but that gets around that's kind of the person he is, and then business comes from somewhere else, so to speak, for him. So um
Yeah, and it can be challenging. I mean, let's face it, Ivan is not exactly desperate for business, and there's a lot of people who get into the networking because they are looking to put food on the table and pay their rent or their mortgage, and get past the bills every month. And I think we can, as networkers, also recognize that there's challenges for everyone, and um, especially and help them, especially as experienced networks, help them make connections and offer those things. And I have to say to the newer networkers out there, is when somebody offers to help, accept it. It's something that Don used to talk about a lot. Is people is like, if somebody says, how can I help you, then accept that as an offer to help, because we often will turn that down, right? Because it's humility. We don't want to ask, we don't want to put on their time. But um, if you ask for something they can't do, then they'll just tell you that they can't do it. But there's a lot out there being offered, and I find that sometimes people are afraid to take what's being offered them.
yeah, I know. What well put. A key thing I put in the notes for the show is this: how do we turn connections into closed business? If you don't mind talking a little bit about this referral cycle, or the cycle of um, connections in our network into closed business, and how that works.
Yeah. Well, the main thing is to always deepen the relationship. So your connections, you've got to evaluate whether that connection is somebody who can be a good source of business for you, and you can be a good source of business for. Where can you be in that relationship, or how can you help them? Right? There's definitely the helping each other. It's not always about being able to give business. I don't always find ways to give referrals, but I have a large network that I can introduce people to. And so, building those connections means it means evaluating how you can help each other, whether you want to help each other, and what time commitments you're willing to make that happen. It used to be we had a whole, well, in Decentive, we had a whole process for that. I don't have that anymore, access to that, but the process is fairly straightforward. I mean, I had somebody ask me yesterday, it's like, do you want to have a referral relationship? And in this case, yes, that is a good answer. And that's not a question that you often get from people, and yet it is a question that is left unasked, and um, then not really done. But it's a great question to ask. Like, do you want to have a stronger relationship? We can do more business together. And then you just got to work to make it happen, put in the time and the follow up and all that.
Yeah, yeah, that's well put. And that's why I think B&I can be so important because you see other people who have that kind of relationship and you go, I kind of want that. Like we look at
Right.
our chapter with, Declan and Evelyn, or, there's people who are just so like in tune. They've been doing that for years, So, um, you know,
Mm.
I think a thing too, you mentioned really looking how to give, if you just go out there and help people to with passing referrals, that's going to give other referrals back to you. And that's why I feel like BNI is so important, because you have to have some ongoing connection with that person, say, your business networking chapter. But what is the process for, what is this business with referrals and giving referrals, getting referrals? And a lot of people may not even understand what that is until you get into BNI or you're introduced to this powerful concept.
Um, okay, I missed something there. So what is the process for giving referrals and passing referrals? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I guess and this might be, there's probably a lot here, and that,
Yeah, lots to unpack.
um, this is kind of the fundamentals of BNI, that you're really generating business by referral. So you don't go put up your sign on a billboard and they call you. It's more your colleague says, "Hey, I'm a wedding planner, but you know, hey, do you need video for your wedding?" And well, I don't do video for weddings, but I have somebody who I'd refer them to. Or you're, I guess why is business, I guess we should just start with why is business by referral so important, and kind of what is it? Yeah.
It's ultimately, so there's, a couple of different by referral types things. There's many different referral sources, but I think the two most known ones would be, from clients, which many people do, say we appreciate your referrals, and those could be pretty good, but they're not necessarily choices that you can make. The danger of having referrals from your own customers is that if you don't satisfy those referrals, you could wind up losing both customers, right? Hey, I'm sending over my mother to work with you. Oh my gosh, I really don't want to work with your mother. And now you've lost both, right? Whereas in the business to business referrals, you get a lot more control. You get to decide what it is you want and who you'll work with. And especially if you're in a position to do that, I can say, I want to work with both partners. I do not work with one or the other. I can do some consulting for them, but as far as the coaching process goes, everybody who works with me has to be, everybody who's, every stakeholder has to work with me pretty much equally, which can be a challenge, but that is my rule. And if somebody refers me somebody who doesn't want to do that, I can go back and say that that was a great referral. I really appreciate it, but it's not quite a good fit. And I may have other people who can help them with that, which is one of the things I do. And that's the other benefit of networking is you start to develop your resources for satisfying those people that you cannot or you do not wish to have as your clients. And because it all comes back eventually, one way or the other. Like, oh boy, that really helped me. I just referred somebody the other day to another coach, and they're just really happy with that person, and that's great. So that reflects well on me, right?
Yeah, I you said something there that I think so important about, and I heard this phrase the other day. I forget the exact expression, about the importance of saying no. Like a lot of referrals we get might not be something we do, or and then you're just going to disappoint that person. So I've learned to just turn down business, but a lot of it is correcting the referral source to say, "Hey, thank you, but we didn't kind of connect well enough about who I need." And
Right.
I've also given referrals that people maybe get a little upset if it's not the right referral too, so that's why this communication is so important. Um, but
Yeah. Yeah. We can't really be upset with people over giving us referrals. It means they want to help. And if they're not giving the right referrals, it means you haven't trained them well enough. I mean, that's another tip for networkers and in referral marketing is it's all my fault. Just if there's something that you're not getting that you want, it's whose fault? Who's in charge of your business and your life and everything you do and your marketing and networking. It's you, and unless you have employees doing it, but even then, it's your, direction and management. So ultimately, as a business owner or, the primary driver of your income, it's always your fault. And if so something's not working right, it's on you to fix it. Nobody else is going to do it for you.
Yeah, well put. And this question's another kind of open-ended one, but I think it's some everybody really struggled with under COVID about how does the network or the your network or the focus of your network building change or evolve over time? And I guess we can start with COVID, but I feel like there's been such a change and with less opportunities in some ways, but then more opportunities over Zoom. So I just see a real importance in kind of evaluating what kind of network you actually need and how to get there. And this is something that's an interesting question for you because I feel like you have such a huge network, and then but where do you want to take that network and kind of why and what
Right.
what how has that changed your goals for your network? Where do you want to go with it? Yeah.
Yeah, it's something I think about a lot, and the I have a very large network, and Mike Macedonia is just, I'm one of those people that Mike Macedonia would say, you've got, it's miles wide, but somewhat shallow. But I do have a lot of deeper relationships. The challenge really for me is that many of the relationships that I've deepened over time are not the ones I need for my current business. So I've had to expand my network just to find the kind of people that would do that. And so I've got my wider network, and that's fine, and so now I'm looking at my focus on that. And it's something like I said, we just go back and evaluate what is working and what can we do better. And in this case, it worked really well to widen my network. Now it's time to find those people in there that I can build a deeper relationship with in order to have a deeper referral relationship. And now I think I've lost track of the question again, but
Well, I actually had a little bit of a follow-up, and
okay.
you might catch your train of thought there. But I think one thing under COVID and that I've seen with you
Oh,
is
COVID,
this
right.
kind of um, without there's not necessarily borders like before you were so focused on the East Bay, but now with coaching, you don't really, there's people all over the place that you probably can connect with on things. So I don't know if you've changed your focus to be a little bit more kind of not geographically based to being more kind of open to people outside the territory and things like that.
Yeah, and this again goes back to another tip in networking and referral marketing is to know your target market, and know it really well so that you can define it easily for anybody who asks. And it's a challenge for people. And if you ask most networkers what is their target market, it's going to be like, well, anybody who needs this, and that doesn't really help. So the challenge for me is, yes, I love the in-person networking, and I was doing a whole lot of it before COVID hit, and that just shut everything down. I don't really like the Zoom networking very much. I find there's too many distractions in my life, and not having that, connection. I'm already introverted enough. I do like it, but I don't feel like it's easy to develop deeper relationships. Having phone calls with people and one-to-ones does help online. And, some of me is like, well, maybe I should find a local organization like, the Oakland Chamber again or something like that. Because ultimately, the amount of people we need in our business, unless we're doing really a national or international business, typically there's enough people in any given area to cover what we need. There are plenty of people forming partnerships in just the Oakland metropolitan area. Um, Ultimately, as I grow the scope of my business, I want to bring in other coaches, so that would, expand the regions. But sometimes we cast too wide of a net, and then we're wondering why we're not catching anything because everything just slips out of that net. It's too big of squares. We really want to get narrowly focused in. And then a good example of this is when I was running the Ascentive region, they gave me Oakland, like the borders of Oakland to market within, and I felt like I should cover Alameda, and some of that, had other exterior motives there. But I went to, you know, Mike, and I asked him. I said I would like to expand to Alameda. And he says, well, there's 40,000 businesses in Oakland. Have you marketed to all of them yet? It's just like, well, No. So, but it's a good reminder that, these regions are huge. If you're a painter, there's millions, there's 400,000 houses in Oakland alone. Our painter in our own chapter, if you ask him where he goes, he's really, really careful about like North Berkeley and just that area. And that gives him enough business to keep him going pretty much perpetually. So as networkers, it's really a good idea to avoid stretching ourselves once we figure out who our target market
Great. And I know I could see why you would think that because there's so much, most people focus on that broader area that you're talking about. So you kind of, you're going to pick up a lot of leads that are like outside a little bit, you know?
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, it'll come. If you paint the target, people will throw things at it, and but you got to paint the bullseye for them, and then the rest of it they'll fill in.
Now, did you want to, we have a couple more questions, and I know this is the one I jumped ahead to. Did you want to say anything more about the importance of your why and core values and why that work, how that work can help you build a network?
Yeah, we talked a lot about that, and I'll give it a really good example. So I worked on my why many many years ago, and really really got that thing going deep. And I believe for a coach, if I'm taking people through a transformational journey, I need to know the source of my own transformations and the reasons why. And everybody's got a different level of their why and what their needs are there. But I actually told my story to my provisors group in my introduction. It was a 5 minute introduction, and I could say this is what I do and this is how I do it, and blah blah blah. But when I said, I just told my story and a little bit of what I do. And months later, people are still referring back to that. Oh my God, that was a great story, and it's they're so brave and so courageous to share it, or it's inspiring or it's so helpful. So ultimately, they're remembering me for being who I am versus what I do. And really, to paraphrase Simon Sinek, it's people don't refer what you do, they refer who you are, right? They don't, and as he says, they don't buy what you do, they buy who you are, and or buy why you do it. And so that's really the why. And we build relationships through those stronger associations of values, right? And so if you know your why, you know your core values, then it's easier to find those other people who resonate with them.
Yeah, and you said something earlier that leads into my last question that I think sets it up is the importance of having those conversation people with people who say they want to help you. Because
Right.
if, to get this pitch down, like you mentioned the other day, were stumped by how somebody phrased about what's your value proposition, or
Right.
people ask you like from all angles, and it kind of stumps you a little bit because you've never like you might be, especially when you've done a pivot in your business, but, um, so this is something that I think, see, you're so good at one-on-one is how to talk to people about their business. And it opens up holes that we have in our arguments and things like that. So, why is this something you can do for partnerships or, you, you know, I guess I'm getting at just the importance of kind of your people who you can trust and kind of have a sounding board. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that that's also a big benefit of networking, and as you develop these things is building, relationships with people who will help you with it. And calling upon them for that help. We see that a lot in BNI. I think that's one of the biggest benefits of BNI. Most people come for the business and stay for the education. And by
Yep.
education, I don't mean, what the education coordinator talks about. It's really the education we get from others, right? This coach I meet in BNI, also provisors, and provisors can be the education too. It's a different level, but the to sit in there with a coach who's been successful, and to have him say, I've listened to you for 15 minutes and I'm still not sure what you do, and or why it is I would want to refer you what this thing is. And then I just made a very succinct point. He says that's exactly what you should have said in the first place. And I'm not offended, because this is a difficult thing to do. And we want people to understand us. We can't get frustrated when they don't, because again, whose fault is it? If they don't understand us, I'm not being understood. I'm not making myself understood. And so I want to refine that. And by the way, AI really helps with that. 'Cause then you can go to ChatGPT and have that conversation of, this is what I'm thinking. Can you help me refine it? But ultimately, sometimes even that gets a little formal, and you've just got to talk to people and say, this is what I'm trying to say. Does this make sense to you? And I practiced that this morning with somebody, and she said, "Oh, I get it perfectly." Whenever I tell somebody, whereas in the past I always told people don't form a partnership, now I can refer them to you. So
Yeah, yeah. I use the example from campaigns, and I think Donald Miller has some good content on that. It's not really how much you say, it's really how do you boil that down. If you're, it's almost like being a candidate to just be on message. You just it's kind of having talking points that work and stick to those. And if you go deep into some philosophical things, people get a little lost and they forget why they kind of came uh there to begin with.
yeah,
Um,
keep it simple, keep it short, and then yeah, some people do love to get into the philosophy of it. I mean, I have people who will start to ask me all kinds of
yeah.
questions, which I enjoy. So
That's what makes it fun,
yeah.
networking, get all of that talking. And I wanted to just end with, why is B&I such an important piece to the business networking puzzle? And this is kind of what, this was the whole puzzle for me in a lot of ways. And I think it depends, you said some people might not be ready for B&I. Maybe some people are graduated out of B&I, but if you have any just closing thoughts on BNI. And we also wanted to invite people to come check out our BNI chapter if they do want to learn more about networking. Yeah.
Yeah, BNI is just an organization. It provides, a structured form of networking that, um, creates groups and chapters and creates some accountability and an ability to, it offers a place to build relationships. You can do that kind of work, intentionally, just about in any through any kind of networking, but it's a challenge to put in that time. Somebody who trained people to put in that time and how to do it with a structured system and what to ask and all the questions and 6-week program and all that. It proved to me that most people say what they want, but they won't put in the commitment to do it. And so BNI, one of the greatest benefits of BNI is that it really creates the commitment to do something. Even if it's not really enough, it will get you started every single week thinking about what you could be doing better. And um, so I think that even though maybe BNI isn't the best place for where I'm doing my thing, I think it's actually a good source of business, but it's also a reminder every single week that I'm focusing on these relationships. And also I meet great resources and great people. I mean, so I don't plan to leave at all, even though I probably could build my network much more intentionally and nationally and all that. It's the value really is in that frequent reminder to keep focus on relationships and
Yeah.
local relationships. Yeah.
Yeah, well put. And I just love what you said earlier about learning about networking, but also networking at the same time. So going to maybe hear somebody like you talk on Room Full of Referrals or other coaches who give seminars, because then you're networking, but you're also building your knowledge. And I feel like we might do a larger series on this networking because so much of this great content just lives in talking to people and kind of chatting about it. And not so it's not the fun way is to not learn it in a book, but to just learn it from podcasts or showing up to hear speakers and things like that. I don't know if you'd agree with me there.
Yeah, some people just they like that. Yeah.
Great. And yeah, we will share some things as you have more events coming up. I'm gonna, do my monthly e-news. You can get on my list for East Bay events, when Corey's talking or somebody in our network, I'll put it in there.
We
And
also have yeah.
feel free to share anything with me that's coming up too, Corey, and we'll
We
put
have
that out.
our flight plan next week. This is a 2.5 hour strategic planning webinar. But it really is going to be focused a lot on the why and the core values and the vision and all that. So we really believe that's a big part of the strategic plan process is to evaluate those pieces of what it is that really drives you versus not just, setting goals is one thing, but actually having the drivers behind it and evaluating those. And so that's what it's about. If you've done it before or you have never done it, it's a really valuable class. It's only $35 and gets you access to our membership platform and all the recorded programs and our co-working for 3 months, I think, maybe forever.
Okay,
Um,
great. I'm going to put the link to that. I will put the link to your website. I'm going to try to find that dedicated link. If you have it, send it to me or put it in the uh the comment section. But yeah, flight plans just I'd call it kind of your one of your flagship program, just an incredible program that I've been through a few times. And so yeah, we'll talk more about this stuff in a future episode. And thanks for sharing everything. I feel like we just scratched the surface, but we got to a lot of the key exciting points. So I'll if you have any closing comments, Corey, feel free to make them. Otherwise, we'll
no,
sign.
thank you, David.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
yeah, time to,
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for joining us, everyone. And check out the comments for Corey's upcoming flight plan seminar.
yeah.